The morning sun spilled across the skyline of the city, painting the towering glass buildings in hues of gold and amber. Inside the Khan mansion, Arman Khan stirred awake in his king-size bed, the luxurious silk sheets rustling softly as he stretched. The faint hum of the city below was a distant murmur here, behind walls of polished marble and floor-to-ceiling windows. From the kitchen, the smell of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling omelets wafted through the corridors. Sara, Arman's wife, moved quietly but with practiced efficiency, humming a soft tune as she flipped an omelet in the pan. Her long, dark hair was tied neatly in a braid, and a simple apron adorned her slender frame. Despite the grandeur of the mansion, Sara's presence was grounded and comforting, a warm touch of normalcy in a world of luxury. Arman padded into the kitchen, his bare feet making no sound on the marble floor. His gaze softened the moment he saw her. "I smell something amazing," he said, stretching his arms above his head. Sara smiled shyly, placing a plate of omelet in front of him. "I made your favorite omelet, Arman," she said, her eyes glinting with gentle pride. "You always know how to make me smile," he replied, pulling out a chair and sitting down. He reached across the table to take her hand, a private ritual that reminded them both of the love they shared, away from the opulence and expectations of the world. Breakfast passed with quiet conversation. Arman shared stories from the business world, exaggerating just enough to make Sara laugh. She, in turn, recounted small tales from her simple upbringing, and he listened with rapt attention. There was a kind of magic in these moments, a private joy that money or power could never buy. After breakfast, Arman reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, elegantly wrapped box. He handed it to Sara, who blinked in surprise. "For me?" she asked, her voice soft. "Yes," he said, smiling. "Happy first anniversary." Her fingers trembled slightly as she untied the ribbon. Inside was a delicate gold locket engraved with their initials. She opened it to find a tiny photograph of the day they had married. Tears welled in her eyes. "Arman," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "I love you, Sara." "I always will," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. They shared a quiet embrace, the kind that needed no words, the kind that spoke of promises, trust, and the fragile beauty of happiness. Outside, the staff watched respectfully, smiling softly at the intimate scene. Even in a house of wealth and power, love had a way of grounding everything. As the morning unfolded, the couple prepared for the day. Arman had a business meeting, and Sara busied herself tidying up the mansion and helping the staff with small tasks. The contrast between her simple, humble ways and the grandeur surrounding her was striking, but it never felt out of place. If anything, it made the luxury seem softer, more human. Unseen by either of them, Camilla Khan, Arman's mother, watched from the balcony. Her sharp eyes traced every movement, every small smile exchanged between husband and wife. Her lips pressed into a thin line, her mind already churning with thoughts of disapproval. "She doesn't belong here," she muttered under her breath, her tone laced with a mixture of disdain and determination. "I won't let her take what's mine, what my family deserves." Arman kissed Sara on the forehead before leaving for his meeting. "I'll be back by evening." "Don't do anything extraordinary," he said with a playful grin. Sara laughed softly, a sound that filled the mansion's grand halls. "I'll try," she teased, though in truth, she had no plans beyond her simple tasks. As Arman's car disappeared down the long driveway, the warm morning light continued to filter through the mansion. On the surface, everything seemed perfect, but in the quiet corners behind doors and smiles, a storm was gathering, a storm that would test love, courage, and the bonds of family in ways neither of them could yet imagine. The mansion hummed with the quiet rhythm of daily life. While Sara moved through the halls, dusting and tidying, the staff carried out their chores with practiced precision. The serenity, however, was deceptive. In the shadows of the grand corridors, a storm was brewing. Camilla Khan sat in her opulent sitting room, a cup of untouched tea in her hand. Her sharp eyes scanned the halls, landing on Sara as she worked. A small frown creased her forehead. "She thinks she can replace me," Camilla muttered, her voice low. "Dangerous." "That girl," With her simple ways, her naive smiles, she doesn't understand what this family deserves. I'll make her regret ever marrying Arman. One of the loyal maids dared a slight nod, knowing better than to speak. Camilla's gaze was piercing. Do you hear me? I will teach her a lesson she will never forget. She must understand her place. Sara, meanwhile, moved through the mansion with gentle efficiency, completely unaware of Camilla's plotting. She organized flowers, checked the silverware, and even paused to straighten the cushions in the grand sitting room. Her hands trembled slightly as she polished a vase, but it was more from exertion than fear. She hummed softly, the tune drifting to the hallways like a soft echo of normalcy. A brief memory flickered in her mind. Her mother's voice from years ago, soft and encouraging. Kindness and patience are your greatest strength. Never let cruelty shape who you are. Sara smiled faintly, gripping the memory like a lifeline. In that moment, she had no inkling of the cruelty lurking just a few rooms away. Camilla moved with careful calculation, summoning Sara to the private study under the pretense of teaching her household duties. Sara, she called, her voice falsely sweet, I have a few things to show you about managing a home properly. Come here. Sara approached, oblivious to the danger. Of course, Camilla, she replied politely, setting down a tray of folded napkins. The staff watched silently from a distance, instructed not to interfere. They obeyed Camilla out of fear, their loyalty balanced uneasily between the mother of the house and the young mistress. Camilla closed a heavy wooden door behind them, the click echoing ominously in the quiet room. Her hands moved with purpose as she reached for the tools she had set aside earlier, a hot iron, small and deadly, gleaming in the soft morning light. Sara looked up, confusion clouding her gentle features. Camilla, what is this? She asked, her voice tentative. Camilla's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Just a little demonstration, my dear, she said smoothly. A lesson in what it means to respect the family you married into. Sara felt a chill creep up her spine. I don't understand, she whispered, taking a small step back. Don't be afraid, Camilla said, though her tone was anything but comforting. I only want you to learn quickly, before you ruin everything. Outside the room, the mansion seemed to hold its breath. The sunlight streaming through the windows was warm, oblivious to the tension building within. Sara's heart raced. Her thoughts swirled with disbelief and fear. She had never imagined that her life in this grand house would come to this, a cruel test at the hands of the very woman who should have welcomed her. As she took a cautious step forward, Camilla's eyes gleamed with satisfaction, a predator's anticipation in the quiet room. Sara's hands trembled, but her mind clung desperately to that one thought that had sustained her all her life. Kindness and patience are my strength. I will endure this. Unbeknownst to both women, Arman was returning home earlier than expected. His car rolled down the long driveway, the sound of its engine faint but approaching. He carried gifts from his trip, unaware of the danger waiting just beyond the mansion doors. The stage was set. One door separated love from cruelty, safety from harm, and the moment that would change everything was drawing closer with every heartbeat. The driveway of the Khan mansion gleamed under the late morning sun as Arman's sleek black car rolled to a stop. He parked and stepped out, his mind still occupied with the details of his meeting. A gift from a distant client rested lightly in his hand, and a small, hopeful smile touched his lips as he imagined Sara's reaction. As he entered the grand foyer, something felt off. The usual hum of activity was absent. The staff shuffled quietly, their faces pale and tense. Arman frowned, sensing that the warmth of home had been replaced with a subtle unease. Sara, he called out, his voice echoing slightly across the marble floors. No reply came. His footsteps quickened as he moved through the mansion, a twinge of unease prickling at the back of his neck. Then he heard it, a sharp, high-pitched scream. It pierced the quiet like a knife, cutting through the calm and freezing Arman mid-step. His heart pounded. Every instinct screamed at him to run toward the sound. He burst into the study. What he saw made the blood in his veins turn to ice. Camilla Khan stood over Sara, a cruel glint in her eyes. In her hands was a small, glowing hot iron, poised dangerously close to Sara's skin. Sara shrank back, her face twisted in fear, but Camilla advanced with deliberate intent. "Camilla!" Arman shouted, the word ripping from his throat. "Stop. Don't you dare touch her." The sudden intrusion made Camilla falter. She turned slowly, eyes narrowing. "Arman, you're home early," she said, her voice a venomous calm. "I was only teaching her to respect this family. She's my wife." Arman's voice thundered, echoing against the high ceilings. "And you will not harm her ever again." Sara's breath came in shallow gasps, her eyes wide and terrified. "Arman, she began, but he cut her fear short with protective hand. Arman moved swiftly, placing himself between Sara and Camilla. His hands grabbed the hot iron, yanking it away with a strength born of desperation and love. The sizzling sound filled the room, sharp and metallic, leaving a lingering sense of danger. Camilla's lips twisted into a sneer. "Do you know what's best for your family? I am saving you from mistake," she spat, though her voice wavered under Arman's unwavering gaze. "This is cruelty," Arman said, his tone deadly calm. "You are hurting the person I love, and I will not stand by and let it happen." For a moment, the room was still. Sara clung to Arman, trembling but safe, her heart racing not just from fear but from the shock of seeing his determination. Arman's eyes, dark and fierce, locked onto Camilla's, and she realized, perhaps for the first time, that her power was no longer absolute. You can't do this," Camilla whispered, her voice a mix of disbelief and fury. "She's beneath this family." "She's my wife," Arman said firmly, his voice brooking no argument. "And in this family, respect is earned by kindness and loyalty, not fear. You will leave her alone." Sara's trembling began to ease slightly as she looked up at Arman, her eyes glistening. "Thank you," she whispered, barely audible. Arman nodded, still shielding her from his mother. Every muscle in his body was tense, every nerve alive with the adrenaline of protecting the one he loved. He glanced around the room. Books toppled, chairs slightly askew, the faint metallic smell of burnt fabric in the air, and felt the full weight of what could have happened. Camilla took a hesitant step back, her face pale and lips pressed tight. The authority she had wielded for so long within these walls felt suddenly fragile. Arman's presence, his moral and physical stance, had shifted the balance entirely. He turned to Sara gently, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "You're safe now," he whispered. "I promise. I won't let anyone hurt you again." Sara nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I never thought." Her voice broke, and Arman pulled her into a firm embrace. In that moment, the world narrowed to the two of them, and the mansion, with all its grandeur and power, faded into the background. Outside the study, the staff whispered quietly among themselves, witnessing the undeniable truth. For the first time, the mother of the house had been confronted, and her son had chosen love and protection over blind obedience. Arman's chest heaved, his mind raced with the shock of the moment, but one thought remained clear and unshakable. Sara's safety, her life, and their love were worth any challenge, any confrontation, any storm that would follow. The first step had been taken. The battle for respect, love, and justice within the walls of the Khan mansion had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. The room felt heavy with tension after the shocking encounter. Arman's heart still raced, but his mind was clear. Camilla Khan, for the first time, saw a side of him she had never truly faced. A son willing to stand unwaveringly for the woman he loved. Arman took a deliberate step forward, positioning himself between Sara and his mother, his eyes, dark and steady, bore into Camilla's with the weight of authority. "This ends now, mother," he said, his voice low but unshakable. "She is my wife. You will not harm her again." Camilla's lips curled into a thin, contemptuous smile. "Do you really think you can stop me?" she asked, though there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "She is beneath this family. She doesn't understand our world, our legacy. I am protecting what's mine." Arman's jaw tightened. "Protection doesn't look like this. Hurting the person you claim to protect is not strength, it's cruelty." Sara clutched his sleeve, her hands trembling. "Arman," she whispered, fear still lingering in her voice. "I'm okay now. Thank you." Arman gave her a reassuring squeeze. "I've got you. Always." His gaze returned to Camilla. "You will apologize for this behavior. If not, you will face the consequences. I won't let fear dictate the rules of my home." For a moment, the room was silent except for the faint ticking of a wall clock. Camilla's face tightened, a mix of anger and disbelief. She had ruled a household with iron authority for decades, and yet here was her son, dismantling her power with nothing but resolve. The staff, previously silent, exchanged glances. Some dared a small nod toward Arman, recognizing the courage and authority in his stance. The mansion itself seemed to shift with the new balance of power, the air lighter yet charged with the weight of unspoken truths. Arman motioned toward Sara. "You need medical care for your burns. I will not allow them to worsen under this roof." He guided her gently toward the hallway, the staff stepping aside in silent acknowledgement of his command. Sara's cheeks were flushed, a mix of fear and relief. I never imagined it would come to this," she said softly. I thought families protected, not harmed." Arman brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. "Not all families are perfect, Sara, but I promise I will protect you. And together, we'll face this family and this household as equals." The word seemed to reach Camilla in a way nothing else could. Her lips pressed into a tight line, and she looked away, the first cracks in her confidence appearing. The mother who had once ruled with intimidation now faced a son whose love for his wife made him unyielding. As Sara received attention for the minor burns, Arman stayed close, holding her hand, guiding her through the fear and shock. "You're stronger than you realize," he said softly, "and I'll be by your side every step of the way." Sara's eyes shimmered with tears, but she smiled faintly. I'll try to be strong." Arman's eyes softened. "You don't have to try. You already are." Outside the room, the household staff whispered quietly among themselves, some in awe, some in fear. The dynamic of the mansion had shifted irreversibly. Camilla's dominance had been challenged, her authority questioned, and Arman's unwavering defense of Sara had set a precedent no one could ignore. Camilla retreated to her study, her hands trembling slightly as she closed the door behind her. She sank into a velvet chair, realizing that the battle for control was far from over. But the line had been drawn. Arman had chosen Sara over blind obedience, and that choice would reverberate through the mansion in ways she could not yet predict. Arman remained by Sara's side, gently checking the burn marks. "It's not as bad as it could have been," he said, trying to mask his lingering anger. "But we'll take care of it. You'll heal, and so will the wounds this household has caused." Sara leaned into him, drawing strength from his presence. I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "You don't have to," he replied, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple. "Just trust me, and we'll get through this together." For the first time since Camilla's cruel plan had begun, the room felt safe. Arman's authority, combined with his unwavering love for Sara, had restored a sense of balance. The storm had not passed. It was far from over, but the first crucial step toward justice and protection had been taken. The mansion was silent again, but this time it was the calm of inevitability. The mother who sought to dominate would have to reckon with her son's choices, and the woman he loved would never face harm under his watch again. The soft afternoon light filtered through the tall windows of Sara's room, painting the walls in warm golden hues. The faint scent of antiseptic mixed with the delicate aroma of fresh flowers, creating a strange but comforting atmosphere. Sara lay on the chaise lounge, bandages carefully wrapped around her minor burns, her hands resting lightly on her lap. Arman sat beside her, a glass of water in one hand, a small cloth in the other, gently dabbing at the tender skin on her arm. His touch was careful, almost reverent, and Sara felt the warmth of his presence seep through her fear, replacing it with a fragile sense of safety. "You're healing faster than I expected," Arman said softly, his eyes never leaving hers. "But I'll be here to make sure it doesn't get worse." Sara forced a small smile, despite the lingering sting. I didn't realize how strong fear could feel until today. But I'm glad you were here." Arman's jaw softened as he took her hand in both of his. "You don't have to thank me, Sara. I would do anything to protect you. Anything. Tears glistened in Sarah's eyes, but she held them back, allowing herself only a shaky breath. I know, I can feel that, and it makes me feel safe. I've never felt so safe in my life. The room was quiet except for the soft rustle of the curtains and the occasional distant footstep of the staff. The silence wasn't empty. It was filled with something unspoken, something deeper. It was the bond of trust, of love that had been tested and proven unbreakable. Arman leaned closer, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. Sara, you're stronger than you realize. Stronger than anyone in this house gave you credit for. She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting both vulnerability and determination. I don't feel strong right now, she whispered, but I want to be. For you, for us. Arman's lips curved into a faint, approving smile. You already are. And together, we'll face whatever comes next. You're not alone, not ever. Sara felt the weight of his words settle around her like a warm blanket. The fear, the shock, the trembling from earlier, all began to dissolve, replaced by a sense of quiet confidence. With Arman by her side, she could face anything, even the wrath of his mother. Hours passed in this gentle routine. Arman stayed close, helping her drink water, adjusting her pillows, and quietly checking the bandages. Every small gesture reinforced his dedication. Every glance a silent promise that he would never let harm come to her again. Finally, Sara sat up, her bandaged arm resting gently on her lap. Arman, thank you, she said, her voice steadier now. Not just for saving me, but for standing by me, even when it meant standing up to your mother. Arman shook his head. I wouldn't call it bravery. I just couldn't stand by and watch someone I love suffer. That's all. A faint smile curved Sara's lips. You make it sound so simple. But I know it wasn't. You risked so much for me. He reached for her hand again, intertwining their fingers. Love isn't about convenience or simplicity. It's about choosing someone every day, protecting them, valuing them no matter the cost. And you, Sara, are worth every risk. Sara's heart swelled, a mixture of gratitude, relief, and love. She leaned into him slightly, resting her head against his shoulder. I've never felt so seen, she murmured. Arman kissed the top of her head gently. And you always will be. I see you, Sara, every part of you, and I'll always choose you over fear, over cruelty, over anything else. Outside the room, the mansion continued its quiet rhythm. But inside this space, a subtle transformation had occurred. Sara's resilience had begun to bloom, nourished by Arman's unwavering support. The bond between them, already strong, had deepened into something unshakable. For a brief moment, they allowed themselves to breathe, to exist together in the calm after the storm. It was a small victory, but a vital one. Proof that even in a household dominated by power and control, love and trust could prevail. Arman's gaze softened as he watched Sara settle back comfortably on the chaise. You'll heal, Sara. Not just your burns, but every doubt, every fear. We'll face it all together. Sara closed her eyes for a moment, drawing strength from his words, from his presence. Together, she echoed, a whisper that carried a promise of courage and perseverance. And in that quiet room, bathed in sunlight and trust, a new chapter in their lives began. Not one without challenges, but one fortified by love, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between them. The mansion, once calm after the morning's chaos, now carried an undercurrent of unease. Arman Khan, frustrated by Arman's intervention, retreated to her private quarters, her mind working tirelessly. If she could not harm Sara directly, she would manipulate, deceive, and isolate her. Every corner of the house, every loyal staff member, became a chess piece in her carefully plotted game. Camilla summoned her most trusted maid, her voice icy with authority. Do not let that girl feel comfortable, she instructed. She must know she is an outsider. Make sure she is alone as often as possible. Keep her distracted with chores. Remind her subtly that she doesn't belong here. Yes, madam, the maid whispered, though a flicker of fear danced in her eyes. Camilla's reputation of power and cruelty was enough to make even the bravest hesitate. Meanwhile, Sara continued her day, tending to household duties with the quiet efficiency that had always defined her. She noticed small inconsistencies, books slightly out of place, a note meant for her being withheld, but dismissed them initially, attributing them to oversight. Yet deep down, a faint unease settled in her chest. Something was different, though she couldn't yet name it. Later that afternoon, Sara entered the library to find Camilla had forgotten to return a stack of important household documents. Among them was a letter detailing part of the family inheritance, a detail Sara had never needed to handle before. She hesitated, then remembered a lesson from Arman. Observe, assess, and act with courage. Quietly, Sara retrieved the documents from a hidden compartment in the library, ensuring that Camilla's attempt to control the household would fail without confrontation. She moved with care, her heartbeat steady but alert. It's not just about chores, Sara thought to herself, a quiet determination blooming. It's about surviving with integrity. Arman, returning briefly to the mansion for a meeting with the staff, noticed a subtle tension. Something feels off, he muttered under his breath. He observed Sara's composed demeanor, despite the subtle signs of sabotage. Admiration and pride filled him. She's stronger than I realized, he thought. Camilla, meanwhile, grew increasingly frustrated. Each of her minor schemes was thwarted quietly by Sara, leaving her powerless in ways she hadn't experienced before. She whispered angrily to herself, pacing her luxurious quarters. How is it possible? I've controlled this house for decades, and yet she evades me at every turn. Sara's courage began to show in small but significant ways. When a staff member hesitated to hand her household accounts, clearly influenced by Camilla's whispers, Sara approached calmly. I need to see these accounts, she said firmly. Her tone was polite but unyielding, and the staff member, recognizing the quiet authority in her voice, complied. Arman watched from the hallway, heart swelling with admiration. She's handling it, and with dignity, he thought. He realized more than ever that Sara's intelligence and courage were invaluable, not just in surviving Camilla's schemes, but in navigating complexities of his family and household. That evening, as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows through the mansion, Camilla made one last attempt for the day. She sought to humiliate Sara during dinner, speaking sharply and indirectly criticizing her domestic skills. Sara, however, remained composed. She served each dish with grace, answered every question politely, and never allowed Camilla's words to provoke her. Every subtle attempt to undermine her was met with quiet dignity and calm observation. Arman, noticing the tension at the dining table, leaned slightly towards Sara, offering a small, reassuring smile. She met his eyes, understanding his silent support. Their bond, strengthened by shared trials and unspoken trust, was a shield that Camilla could not penetrate. After dinner, Sara returned to quiet of her room, reflecting on the day. I will not let fear dictate my life, she thought. I will remain true to who I am, and I will face these challenges with courage. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock. Arman entered, concern etched on his face. You handled everything with incredible grace, he said, taking her hand. I know it wasn't easy. Sara smiled faintly, feeling both exhaustion and pride. I just tried to do what was right. I won't let her break me, or us. Arman squeezed her hand gently. I've always known you were strong, Sara. But today, you've shown me a depth of courage I didn't fully appreciate. Camilla's schemes may continue, but I have no doubt we can face them together. Sara leaned slightly against him, feeling the weight of the day lift with his support. She was learning that true strength wasn't about fighting with fists or anger. It was about patience, intelligence, and courage. Outside her window, the mansion's lights flickered on as night settled over the city. Shadows danced across the walls, hinting at the challenges yet to come. But Sara, bolstered by love and growing confidence, felt ready. She would not be intimidated. She would not be silenced. And she would not let anyone, not even Camilla, dictate her worth. For the first time since the attacks earlier that week, Sara understood something vital. The storm had not defeated her. She had begun to rise above it, quietly, powerfully, and with unwavering determination. The grand ballroom of the Khan mansion glittered under the chandeliers, filled with the city's elite. Crystal glasses clinked softly, and the low hum of polite conversation created an elegant soundtrack for the evening. But beneath the grandeur, a quiet tension simmered. Camilla Khan had chosen this evening to humiliate Sara, believing that in front of guests and relatives, she could assert her dominance and remind everyone who truly ruled the house. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, followed Sara as she moved gracefully between the tables, serving with calm composure. "You're doing it all wrong," Camilla hissed under her breath, loud enough for Sara to hear but subtle enough for the others not to notice. "You don't belong here." Sara's hands trembled slightly, but she maintained her composure. She straightened her back and continued serving the guests, her polite smile never faltering. She had learned that humility paired with intelligence could be more powerful than aggression. Arman, watching from across the room, felt a surge of pride. His mother's attempts to intimidate his wife were obvious to him, and he would not allow them to continue. He stepped forward, making his way through the crowd, his presence commanding attention. Conversation softened, and heads turned as the heir of the Khan fortune approached Sara. "Everyone," he said, his voice clear and firm, echoing slightly against the marble floors. The room fell silent, the chatter fading into anticipation. "I would like to take a moment to address something important." Camilla's eyes narrowed, sensing the public confrontation that was about to unfold. Sara's cheeks flushed slightly, nervousness creeping in, but Arman gently placed a hand on her arm, grounding her. "This is my wife, Sara," Arman continued, his gaze sweeping the room. "She is my equal in this household, in this family, and in my life. No one, no matter their relation or status, has the right to harm, humiliate, or undermine her." A hush fell over the room. Camilla's lips pressed into a tight line, and her hands clenched at her sides. For decades, she had wielded control with fear and manipulation, but Arman's words shattered that authority in front of everyone. Sara's heart raced, but she felt a wave of relief wash over her. Arman's declaration was not just a shield. It was a public affirmation of her worth, her dignity, and her place in the family. "You've seen the courage, intelligence, and kindness that Sara brings into this house," Arman continued, his voice unwavering. "Those are the qualities I respect, admire, and love, and I will protect them no matter what." Camilla's face paled, and a subtle murmur rippled through the guests. Whispers spread. The formidable matriarch had been challenged, and publicly. She faltered under the scrutiny of those she had long dominated, unable to muster the composure to counter her son's declaration. Sara, feeling the weight of the moment, straightened her posture. For the first time, she realized that the fear she had carried for months could be replaced by empowerment. She looked at Arman, eyes glistening with gratitude and determination. After a moment, Arman stepped closer, taking her hand. "You are safe here," he whispered, his lips brushing her temple. "And you always will be." The guests, witnessing the quiet yet powerful exchange, exchanged glances of admiration. The narrative of the household had shifted. Sara was no longer merely a quiet, simple wife. She was recognized, respected, and protected. Camilla, retreating to the shadows, seated silently. Her schemes had been exposed, her attempt to control thwarted by the very son she believed would always obey her. Yet in this defeat, a lesson had begun to form. Power built on fear could be challenged, and love could demand justice. Later, away from the watchful eyes of the ballroom, Arman and Sara found a quiet corner of the mansion's terrace. The city stretched endlessly before them, lights twinkling like stars fallen to earth. "You stood by me today," Sara said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "In front of everyone, you showed the world that you would protect me." Arman smiled, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "I promised you once, and I'll promise you again. You are mine to protect, Sara. Nothing will change that, not my mother, not anyone else." Sara leaned against him, feeling the weight of the day lift. I feel stronger," she admitted, "because you gave me the strength to stand with you." Arman kissed the top of her head gently. "And I always will. Our bond, it's stronger than fear, stronger than cruelty. Together, we can face anything." For the first time in months, Sara felt a profound sense of victory, not over Camilla, but over fear itself. She had endured, and she had been recognized. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for now, they had won a crucial battle, and their love and unity had proven stronger than any threat. The mansion, glittering in the night, seemed to exhale a quiet acknowledgement. A turning point had been reached, one that would redefine the family, the household, and the very rules of power within its walls. The mansion was quieter than usual the following morning. The events of the past days had left a permanent mark on its walls, and even the staff moved with newfound respect for the young woman who had endured so much. Arman Khan sat in her private study, her hands folded tightly, the defeat still sharp in her chest. The confrontation at the ballroom had stripped her of authority, and for the first time, she felt the weight of her own vulnerability. Arman entered, calm but firm. "Mother," he said evenly, "your actions over the past week have caused harm. I will not tolerate it any longer. You may remain in this house, but Sara's safety and dignity must never be compromised again." Camilla's lips pressed into a thin line. She opened her mouth to protest, but Arman raised a hand. No arguments. Respect her, or face the consequences. It was a simple directive, but it carried the force of finality. Camilla, unused to being challenged, especially by her own son, realized she had no choice. She nodded stiffly, retreating into the shadows of her own pride. Sara, meanwhile, had begun to regain her composure. The minor burns on her hands had healed, leaving only faint marks, but the emotional wounds ran deeper. Yet each day, under Arman's unwavering support, she felt stronger. She had survived cruelty, intimidation, and threats, not by changing who she was, but by standing firm in her values, intelligence, and courage. In the days that followed, Sara quietly began taking initiative within the household. She organized small charitable events, oversaw the estate with a gentle but firm hand, and began managing the family's social commitments. Every step she took was a testament to her resilience, her courage, and her ability to rise above the malice that had sought to undermine her. Arman watched her with pride, admiration, and love. "You've transformed this house," he said one afternoon, standing beside her as she reviewed event plans. "Not with power or wealth, but with strength and grace. Camilla may have tried to dominate, but you've earned your place with dignity." Sara smiled, a warmth in her eyes that spoke of quiet triumph. "I didn't do it alone. Your support, your belief in me made all the difference." Arman took her hands in his, holding them firmly. "We face everything together now. No one will ever harm you again, and no one will ever undermine your place in this family. I promise you that." The staff, once tense and wary of Camilla's dominance, now moved with a subtle shift in respect. Sara's quiet authority, bolstered by Arman's protection, was acknowledged without question. They had witnessed the courage, the patience, and the integrity that defined her, and even those loyal to Camilla began to recognize the strength she wielded, not through fear, but through character. Camilla, though still proud and unyielding, began to see the error in her ways. Though she would never openly admit it, the lessons of the past week were not lost. Authority built on cruelty was fragile. Power without respect was meaningless. Even she had to acknowledge that Sara's strength had shifted the balance permanently. That evening, Arman and Sara stood together on the terrace, overlooking the city lights that twinkled like a reflection of the stars above. The mansion was quiet, the air heavy with the scent of blooming jasmine. For the first time in weeks, they allowed themselves to simply breathe, to savor the calm after the storm. "You've changed everything," Sara said softly, leaning against him. "This house, my place here, it feels different now. Safer, wiser." Arman smiled, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple. "You've changed everything," he replied. "Not just the house, but me, this family, and the way we face the world. You are my equal, my partner, and the one I will always protect." Sara's eyes glistened with tears, not of fear or pain, but gratitude and love. "I never imagined I could feel this safe, this valued." "You are valued," Arman whispered, tightening his hold around her, "more than anyone can understand. And I'll spend my life showing you that." The mansion, grand and imposing, seemed to exhale quietly. A chapter of cruelty and fear had ended, replaced by one of respect, love, and empowerment. Sara's journey had been difficult, but it forged her into a woman unshakable in character and strength. As the night deepened, Arman and Sara stood together, hand in hand, watching the city glow beneath them. The storm had passed, but its lessons remained, proof that courage, love, and integrity could overcome even the most entrenched cruelty. In the quiet of the mansion, the future stretched ahead, bright and unbroken. Together, they were unstoppable. Together, they had turned pain into power, fear into resilience, and chaos into a home filled with love. The morning sun spilled gently over the Khan mansion, its golden light casting a warm glow across the gardens. Sara stood on the terrace, the breeze lifting her hair as she watched the city awaken. For the first time in months, there was no fear in her heart. Only peace, strength, and quiet joy. Arman joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "Good morning," he whispered, pressing a gentle kiss to her shoulder. Sara leaned back, smiling. "Good morning," she replied. "It feels like a new beginning." "It is," Arman said, his voice steady. "Together, we've faced challenges, cruelty, and fear. And together, we've emerged stronger. Nothing will ever take this from us." They stood in silence, watching the sunlight dance across the mansion grounds, a symbol of hope and resilience. Camilla had retreated, her authority diminished, and the household had settled into a new rhythm, one of respect, dignity, and unity. Sara turned to Arman, eyes shimmering. "Thank you for protecting me, for believing in me, for loving me." Arman smiled, holding her close. "No thanks needed. Love isn't about thanks. It's about choosing each other every single day. And I will always choose you." The mansion stood quiet and majestic, a home no longer fear, but of love, strength, and hope. Together, they had conquered cruelty, forged unbreakable bonds, and stepped into a future full of light. The mansion was quiet at last. The storms of fear, cruelty, and control had passed, leaving only peace, love, and strength in their wake. Sara and Arman stood together on the terrace, hand in hand, the city lights twinkling below like a promise of endless possibilities. "I never imagined we'd come this far," Sara whispered, her voice soft but filled with conviction. Arman pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. "We faced it all together. And together, we'll face everything that comes next." For the first time, the mansion felt like home, safe, warm, and full of hope. The past had tested them, but their love and courage had triumphed. No cruelty, no challenge, and no shadow could ever undo what they had built together. In the golden light of a new dawn, Sara and Arman stepped forward, stronger than ever, ready to embrace a future filled with love, respect, and unshakable unity.